Hey everyone, welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I am Nerdarchist Ted, hanging out here at Gen Con with special guest Andrew Hand. Today we're going to talk about a new approach to world building. Jump down to the description below where you can join Nerdarchy, the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy. All right, Andrew, why don't you, tell the audience at home, who you are, where they can find you, all that jazz.
Yes, I'm Andrew Hand. I'm from Limitless Adventures. You can find us at limitless-adventures.com. We sell third-party products for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and our role is to cut DM prep time, make it easier for DMs. Our ideal audience are DMs like ourselves that have full-time jobs, don't have as much time as we used to sit down and write over graph paper for hours planning our adventures. So.
Absolutely. Now, what you guys out there may not know, Limitless Adventures is a great company that every month when Nerdarchy does its giveaway, you allow me to give away one of your great digital products in addition to whatever physical products that we're giving away. So I want to, now that I'm seeing you in person, want to, be able to give a big thank you for that.
Yeah.
Because it's just one more thing that they get on our regular giveaways.
Oh, you're very welcome. I think it's probably time we updated that or gave you some new stuff.
Sure.
So let's add another one.
I got no problems with that. So today we're going to talk about a new approach to world building. You brought this topic to me. So what's the new approach?
Well, I've been seeing a lot of things on social media about GMs that are frustrated with how their games go. They don't feel like they're getting enough engagement with their players. Sometimes GMs and DMs we have a problem where I think of it as the J.R.R. Martin syndrome. Like we all have these like vast world full of amazing characters and backstories, but we have trouble getting our player characters to care about that. So that's where the new approach comes in.
All right. So I totally understand. If we want to make worlds that make sense, we want to start small and build out and make people care about the things that are in our world.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the same way. I started playing D&D in '92, and I would do the same thing. I would first create this massive world with all these NPCs and these factions and these environments, and then I would bring it to the table and I would expect people to fall in love with it as much as I did. But they come to the table with a character and that they've thought about, and it's like the two don't always go together. So what I've started to do is, like you said, I start small. I don't go continent at the first start. Let's do a town. So what I did with my last campaign is I showed up and I had ideas, sketched out, but I sat down and I'm like, what does this town need? And the players at the table, they were just sort of looking at me like a GM had never asked them that before, right? So someone was like, well, after a stunned silence, they're like, well, it's got to have a tavern, right? All adventures start in a tavern. I'm like, excellent. What's the name of this tavern? And, I just throw it to the next person, and they're like, his wife was mad at him because we were playing D&D that night and she wanted to do something else. He's like, the Angry Wife. And we're like, okay. So
yeah, the Sister Tavern, the Salty Mistress.
Yeah. So we just throw it to the next guy at the table. We're like, well, okay, what's the bartender like? And they're like, oh, there's always this pause. And then they start getting into it and they're like, oh, well, it's a dwarf, but he lost an eye, used to adventure. And they start coming up with it. I'm like, great, what's their name? And the whole time I'm writing it down. And I'm drawing it out.
This is the fantastic point that what you're doing gives me two things that we talk about here all the time is this sounds like a session 0, so that you're building things together
even before characters. Let's build this. Let's get this world started.
All right, so session -1.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
You're getting people involved in what's going on. Session 0 is a great way to get things going because if players have a hand in the world that they're gonna play, and it's like, okay, well, I want to do something different. Okay, well, how can we make this world different? How can we do something that hasn't been done before or these players haven't had before? You can incorporate that, and that gets the buy-in.
Yeah, that has to be a conversation that you have because you don't know your players. We know this. Players will always do what we least expect. So you might show up with this grind heavy, dungeon delve, and yeah, they tell you I want political, I want I want that, but then you've already written all of this mega dungeon, and you're like, well, what do I do with this? And another thing that this approach helps with is, one thing that I've always found troublesome is when I would write those perfect worlds and come up with them, then the players would show up and they would have a story, and like, if you've ever had a player that showed up who had like 4 or 5 pages of backstory,
That's
right?
me. Like,
But the problem that caused for the DM was they're like, oh, well, I'm a knight of this organization, and you're like, well, that organization doesn't exist in my
now
game
it
world,
does.
you know. But if you do that, if you come to the table without a character, without a backstory, and then they can do that, and then you can just weave it in without cutting or
Right.
pasting it over something you've already got.
and that loops back to the other thing that you were talking about, and that's player agency. When you have the ability to just be like, all right, I am relinquishing control, whether it be during world creation or in your regular play, you have the ability to say, all right, I'm giving you the power. Here you go. You are the GM for a moment. I like to do this every so often so that I can say, all right, power is yours. How do you manipulate it? And sometimes I handle it great. Sometimes the players handle it great. Sometimes I've handled it not so great.
Yeah.
But like when you're at the moment that you're there, you have to make the snap decision of, okay, well, all right, I gave you agency, but you're kind of abusing it.
Yeah.
Other times it's like, oh, that's a really great idea, and I've thrown that out there. Players are traveling, and an encounter happens.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has a different idea about what an encounter is.
I like that approach. It's I read somewhere, I can't remember who, I wish I could attribute it, but they say you come to a crossroads, what do you see? Or you come to the top of the hill, what do you see? He doesn't have anything written. He asks the players, and they're like, oh, there's a dragon. Awesome, there's a dragon. Let's do this, or there's a city and it's on fire and there's gnolls everywhere, and you're like, okay, let's do this. And I mean, and when when you've been doing this for a little while, then when they tell you it's gnolls, like, all right, you flip to gnolls, you go. I mean, you can integrate it pretty seamlessly.
So where else do you go with world building? I mean, it's got to be more than just that session 0, and it's got to be more than just player agency. What else do we have going on?
Well, then once they've got it set, I try and stay a few steps ahead. But another thing that I've been working on currently in my campaign is trying to, going back to your thought about player agency, is trying to actually give the players out of character control over factions. So we've created this city and we have this faction, and then I like to give them agency over a faction, maybe even that's in opposition to their player character goals. And then, so right now I'm trying to work on some mechanics to where the players can, almost like a mini game, like if you've ever done any of the kingdom stuff with Pathfinder. And how they have, like, you take a turn and you have a character sheet for your kingdoms, similar to that, where you would have you maybe either start or end each session with a role for the faction, and then give them ideas, sort of like when David Noonan did he did the factions for 3.5, and
right.
And you had certain, like, you could attack them or you could attack their economy, and you had these different things that you could do, and it would affect what happens in game. That would be where I would take it next.
All right. So when we made our campaign world, whether you call it Chimes of Discordia, Ulthgania, we're still playing with it. We've got a wide canvas. We've determined that this is going to be a big world. But we'd say, okay, geographically, our world is interesting.
Yeah. Because
it's not like the world that you're living in. It's not where you can see one sun, one moon. We've got a bunch of moons. We've got, as opposed to the ends of the world being ice, we got it in the middle. And then we've got this open space that we can plug in wherever we want. So when the players decide to travel, okay, well, I guess I need to know where that is.
Yeah.
And because we've got a gigantic planet, we can say, well, we're going to fill it in only when we feel like filling it in. Because realistically, if you've got a big enough, challenging enough world, then you can confine people to a certain area, even over the scope of an entire game.
It sounds similar to what we do. We have a large fresh water body that's in the center of our kind of known world, or what the players know. And then every time we shift on a campaign, what we'll do is we'll go to a new region, we'll go to a new a new DM, and then that way we don't get stuck in this idea of this is how it always is, So right now we're in the halfling area, and last time we were in the human lands, and now totally different cultures, totally different things. Our next campaign, maybe we move up to where all the high elves live, or it allows us to have very different things, and we don't need to have it all mapped out, because we just kind of, every time we shift to a new area, and then we just slowly fill in this circle of the world. And it's what you're saying about people arguing about who is right. I will purposefully change the history a little bit. I did that. I started the new campaign with a recap on the history of the world, because we'd actually added a new player to the table, and he wasn't really around for all this stuff. But I changed things because that's how histories are. They're written by the victors. And our last campaign, it ended a little
Walkie.
Yeah, because my character ended up becoming a lich, and the party wasn't super happy with that, and it ended with the lich TPKing the rest of the table, which that had never happened at our table before.
Yeah.
But I started with recapping it and casting my character in this great light. He's not a horrible evil necromancer.
Well,
he's
no.
this perfect guy.
He was the victor. He got to say,
he got to write it.
Why he did what he did, lie about whatever he wanted to, and say that while he's trying to save the world, his friends turned on him as they were turned by darkness.
They were all traitors. So
turned by darkness.
So it adds to the history of the world, and we have a private Facebook group for our campaign group. It's been going on for several years, and it's funny because when we save those documents in there, you can go in and check your files, and you can see all of them, and you see these different histories, and they don't correspond. It's just like real life history. So.
Wow, that's amusing. But speaking of history, that's another thing. What kind of history does your world have? Are you at the first age of civilization? Are we just discovering these tools, and maybe your tool proficiencies in your game are not as readily available?
And we can get rid of that damn rapier. I can't stand that. It drives me crazy. Why do we wear plate armor and then people are using rapiers?
That's an issue of whether you want to get into more realistic combat versus whatever. And we're not talking about that.
No,
today.
We're not going to light that fire.
So when you get into the histories of the world, these things are going to become important. In our world, in Nerdarchy, we're like many ages where the gods are massively powerful. They're not something that will ever be statted, because you're not going to kill a god. Mm-hmm. That's not the way we play. Every once in a while in our world, the people, the mortals, do something and things get screwed up, and it's like, nope, that's it.
Reset.
And they make a cleansing to some degree or another. In one of these ages, the dragons, they're the dragons, the immortal dragons, were doing things, getting into wars, and it's like, nope, time out. Every immortal dragon and all their allies were shoved into their own pocket dimensions. So the start of Dave's campaign, he began to unlock some of these dimensions.
Have you ever had any characters have an apotheosis where they then enter the pantheon? Because we've done that in our campaign, and you go back to the player agency and the idea of having other people sort of help to shape the world. Then once the characters that don't normally GM or DM, if they have that character that's we kind of turn to them at the game. We're like, oh, the players came to your temple. What would they see? What would they happen? And they're like, oh, and they get really invested in the game.
We've never had anyone achieve divinity in any of our games. Our particular play style is that's not something that we think is a regular thing. I don't have a problem if that's the way other people want to play. You have fun the way you want to have fun.
Sure.
But with us, it's nah, that's never been something that I've personally had a desire to do. My favorite class, for the most part, is usually cleric.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's nope, I'm just a conduit. You give me the power. Having religion, having faith is a good role-playing tool, because it's all right, well, I know I know my god or goddess likes this stuff. So, like, all right, there's a tool. Now I can go out and I can talk to people. And I can play anywhere on the spectrum of, well, the cleric or the god gave me powers and I don't want them, or the nope, I'm the proselytizers of this religion, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to hand out pamphlets, and I'm going to say, oh, is there a reason why you're not following this god? This is all the things that we have because of them or because of her.
I think the thing you need to watch out for is within the next campaign, Dave will become a god, and you'll never see it coming. He's been planning for years. He's scheming in the dark and shadows.
He's got an AC of the gods in my game, and he's been waiting. He was waiting like one of the last sessions. It was like I hit this, but that was 30. He's like, yeah, still didn't miss.
Well, with bounded accuracy, I think he could probably just set it 1 point past the highest possible. And
he's found every little way to get bonuses to his AC, and it's pretty crazy. Yeah. So those are some great ways to kind of look at world building, maybe in a new light. You want to make sure that you've got some good rich history. You want to get the players as well as the characters involved in your world, in your story, both as as you're talking about at the creation point, but as well as while the game is going. You want to include them in your story so they feel that they're involved. Use some player agency, again, both in the beginning and during, so that you keep your players engrossed in what's going on. And anything else that we...
Well, 2 points. One, they're not going to end up forgetting an NPC that they themselves created. You every session you start and you're like, why don't we do a recap? And they say, some stuff happened. I think there was a blacksmith. But if they create that blacksmith, if they give that blacksmith some quirks or some background, then they're going to bring him in. And 2 is you can't hit them cold. So what I do is I will show up with some lists. So these are some things that would possibly appear in this town or in this village or in this region. And then if they say, I don't know, you could start kind of, would there be a tavern? Would there be this? Would there be that? And they say, oh yeah, that's what it is. And then they can run from there. So just make sure you have a little
bit of work done.
For them to start with.
All right, so Andrew, do you want to tell everybody one more time who you are, where they can find you, where they can get some of your great products?
Sure. If you want to cut your prep time for your 5e games, you can go to limitless-adventures.com. And if you'd like to try some new genres, namely superheroes, World War II, and 1980s horror, you can go to fithevolution.com.
So thank you for hanging out with us at Gen Con today. If you guys out there, you have any great world building, campaign building tips that you want to share, or any great stories, down in the comments below. While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, stay nerdy.